Of all the interviews out there, system design interviews are one of the absolutely least understood of any type of question. So today I'm going to give you my 3 top tips for how to ace your system design interview. What's up, everyone? Sam here from ByteByByte.com, and today we're going to be talking about system design interviews. Now, I think that one of the biggest issues with system design interviews, and one of the reasons why people get so hung up on them, is that there is so much that you need to know, and there is so little information out there about how companies actually evaluate these system design interviews. So what we need to do is we need to come up with a good strategy and general approach that's going to work for us no matter what sort of things the company is actually looking for, and make sure that we are going to be as successful as we can. A good thing about system design interviews to keep in mind is that companies probably aren't judging your entire interview just based on that. You're going to be doing technical interviews as well, and system design is just going to be one part of the puzzle. So if you do really badly on system design, it might hurt you a bit, and if you do really well, it might help you a bit, but it's not going to make or break your interview. So that's one thing that we can get out of the way right now and might make you feel a little better the next time you go into a system design interview. So let's talk first about how we actually prepare for the system design interview. And this is something that's really important because we are preparing ahead of time and trying to put ourselves in as good a position as possible to succeed at these interviews. But at the same time, it seems like there is an infinite amount of information that you could know. For example, just think about how many different database technologies there are out there. There's no possible way that you could know all those, and it's just not necessary. So how do we think about what we need to know and what we don't need to know? Well, the key thing here is to start with the knowledge that you already do have. So chances are you're not going to be asked a system design interview if you're just fresh out of college, and so you've probably been working for a couple of years as a software engineer. If you're at that point, then you've been using these technologies already, right? You've been using a database technology of some sort. You've been using different like software design patterns, and you can draw on those in your system design interview. So the key with studying is to start with what you know and then fill in the gaps. So let me tell you what I mean by that. There are basically a broad categories of different things that you need to know for your interview, for your system design interview. There might be load balancers. You might need to know about message handlers. You might need to know about database technologies. And so the key is to know at least one thing in each of these large areas. So let's take message handlers for example. You might have Kafka, you might have RabbitMQ, you might have a million other things, but you don't need to know all of those. You need to know what a message handler is and how it works generally, and then you want to know one specific technology that you can use in your interview if you need to. And by doing this, we're going to focus our efforts more and really be able to spend less time covering just message handlers and actually get to everything in our interview that we might need to know. And we're also going to understand what are the trade-offs of that specific technology. So, for example, if you're using different database technologies, what are the trade-offs between a SQL and a NoSQL database? As long as you know what those are and you can talk intelligently about them, that's the most important thing in your interview. Not that you pick the perfect technology, because everyone's going to have different experience. If you go through all of these broad categories of technologies that you need to know and make sure that you know something from each of these categories, you're going to have everything that you need to be successful in your interview. The next thing that we want to do comes when we are actually in the interview. And this is super, super important, and not enough people do it. And that is to really understand the problem. And now I'm not talking about just, I understand the problem, I know what I'm supposed to do. I'm talking about really deeply understanding the problem. This is understanding the constraints. It's understanding who the users are. It's understanding what the size of the user base is. If you understand what something is being used for, then it's much easier for you to make assumptions about what all of these other constraints need to be. So let's use the example of a messaging app. Maybe it would be like Facebook Messenger, where you're going to have billions of users who are only messaging their friends, but they're using it to share multimedia, and they're using it to share lots of links and all sorts of things like that. That might be one sort of messaging app. Maybe we have a messaging app that's for doctors in hospitals, and so security is really, really important, but we don't need to be able to share multimedia and all of these other things. So we want to think about, if we can really understand what is that core use case, we can define what are going to be the priorities of our design. Where are we going to focus our efforts, and how can we do that as effectively as possible? It's also going to eliminate us having to ask as many questions of our interviewer, because we can make those reasonable assumptions based on how this is actually going to be used. The last thing that I want to talk about that is really important in system design interviews is breaking down the problem. So when you go into a system design interview, as I said at the beginning, you don't necessarily know what exactly they're looking for, because every company is looking for something slightly different. One company might be looking for like a high level design. One company might be looking for you to actually write what all the objects are going to look like for some sort of service that you're building. One company might want you to focus on what the data store is going to look like. You don't really know until you get into the interview. And so the most important thing is to really break down the problem and then engage with your interviewer to figure out what it is that they're looking for. When we go into this interview, we're going to really understand the problem, and then we're going to break it into pieces, right? We're going to have the data store, we're going to have the server, we're going to have the message handler, we're going to have all of these different components, and we want to start with that broad picture of what this is going to look like. And then from there, we can engage with our interviewer and figure out where they want us to go deeper. It's so important, and not enough people just actually engage with their interviewer and talk to them about what it is that they're looking for and what they want you to do. So you can ask them, okay, I have this large structure now, where would you like me to go dig deeper? Maybe they'll say that you can choose, and then you can pick whatever you think is going to be most interesting or is going to be easiest for you, but maybe they'll have something specific in mind that they want you to do. And so by breaking down the problem, not only does it help you to understand it a lot better, but it makes it much, much easier for your interviewer to get what they want out of the interview. And that's the key with any interviewer, is giving the interviewer what they want. So just to recap, our 3 core tips for system design interviews are: 1, to focus on the things that you already know. Don't try and learn tons and tons of new stuff. Focus on the stuff that you know and know it really well. Number 2, truly understand the problem. If you don't truly understand the problem, it's going to be really hard for you to answer this as correctly as your interviewer is going to want you to. And then 3, break down the problem and engage with your interviewer. So those are my 3 biggest tips for system design interviews. I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, please hit subscribe below. And if you haven't already, you can download my free ebook on dynamic programming over at dynamicprogrammingbook.com. And I look forward to seeing you all again soon.